Have you ever experienced the winter wonderland blues? It happens every single year, Brady.
Yeah, it's extra special when you own a pressure washing company.
Yeah, so if you live somewhere other than the southern coastal communities, you experience what we call winter. And that also creates a kind of a downfall inside of money and income, and you end up feeling like you're a loser of a business owner. And that's to be frank.
Yeah, you want to keep everybody employed. You want to keep the business rolling, but it's a classic definition of a seasonal business. And today we've got a really, really great guest on. We've spoken with him, I think, 2 or maybe 3 other times before, but this one is specifically for the wintertime, the war on wintertime, I believe is what we're calling this series, something like that.
Winning the war this winter.
Winning the war this winter is what we're calling it. Yeah. And he is going to give us really good advice on how to do that. I think he shares several things, but one in particular that we really enjoyed a lot and started writing a lot of notes down on that comes in about halfway through the show, and we spend a good amount of time talking about it. So you are going to want to watch this one.
You want to tell them a little bit of what they'll hear inside of it? It's really creating the customer
journey. Yeah, customer journey, customer experience, whatever you want to think from. It gets very easy to become mundane as you're running the business and looking at the numbers from the top down and not think about what each individual customer's feeling. And the wintertime is a great time to do that, and he gives a lot of good pointers on what to review.
Hey, if you haven't had a chance yet, we're trying to grow and be a ministry inside the marketplace. So it'd mean a lot if you'd like, subscribe, and share the podcast if it's adding any value. And without any further ado, our friend,
Jon Karmazyn.
Let's go.
Hey, guys.
What's going on, brother?
Oh, trying to stay warm. It's starting to get cold.
Yeah, it seems to happen every year for some really weird reason. I didn't expect it this year to have a winter time.
Have you guys finished up your Christmas light installations?
Yeah, we have one more tomorrow, and that's the last bit of it. So,
little trivia question for the future: when's the last time you've been on a roof installing Christmas lights?
The last time that I personally have been?
Yeah.
Let's see, 2 days ago.
That makes me feel way better.
Mostly because my operations manager and his wife just had their third child. So I had to kind of jump in last minute to scramble and help out a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. So 3 weeks ago, Brady and I experienced Christmas lighting installations because we didn't want to hire anybody at the end of the season. And then we didn't want to say no to sales. And we know that the winter is coming.
Yeah, the winter's...
So we need to get as much cash grab as we can. And so we mistaken...
Like 6 or 7 days.
12-hour days, freezing cold, hanging on to the side of the roof with one of those goat ladders. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. But anyway, we'll share horror stories in the future. But we want to thank you for being a guest today. And we want to jump right into the content because our content happens every single year for every single company, and it's the winter, at least those that are not on the southern coastal communities. And so inside of your company, I'm assuming you experience winter months.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We've been doing it. We're 12 years in business, and I mean, looking back, our first year in business, I was still technically, I wasn't full time in the business. I still had another job. So that helped bridge sort of the first winter. But my second year in business, so first full year that I was all in on the business, I had my 401k that I had sort of rolled over from my previous employer, and that went bye-bye just to get us through the winter. So had to completely liquidate that. And that was, I tell you what, that was a painful experience. Just, quick financial lesson on anybody. If you've never experienced that before, the penalties and fees that you have to pay to pull that money out
I did
prior
not know
to
business owner.
Yeah.
You're a business owner.
Retirement age, man, oh man, that hurts. I mean, I think I paid a 45% penalty on what I had in there. So I was only able to
my goodness
55% of what was in there. And I worked for 10 or 11 years building that up.
Dude, that sucks.
Hey,
but you know what? It's a lesson I'm thankful for because that was a pain that I didn't want to ever feel again.
Sure.
So
oh my
it's
gosh,
like,
dude.
okay, well, I don't want to have to do this again. I don't want to have to.
Lesson number one.
Yeah, lesson number one in today's schooling session: know that winter comes every year. If you're just starting this business and you don't have a side hustle, prepare. That's what this whole series is about. And actually, I feel like that's the theme inside of it is just preparation. Because like you said, the first year, second year, however long, you didn't feel it the same way until you were there. It's like, oh my gosh, there's no money here.
Yeah,
this is
we were
crazy.
doing Christmas lights at that point. So for us in the Northeast, like we were done middle of November, late November. So I had all of December, January, February. I had 3 solid months, 3.5 months of nothing. So,
John, let me ask you a question, and it's really to help me and our listeners. When you went through that in year 2, why didn't you just quit business and say, you know what, I'm just not cut out to be a business owner?
that's a good question. Looking back, I don't know if it was maybe a combination of ignorance and pride at the time, maybe that like, hey, I did this, like I'm going to do this and we're going to make it work. But a lot of it, ultimately what it comes back down to is the Lord stepped in many, many times and had provided, and lots of prayer and preparation. And like I said, a lot of that experience of having to cash out my 401k early was super painful, but I think it happened for a reason, because now we prepare going into every single winter and we know what we have to do. We we forecast out our budget. We forecast our expenses for those months that we do not have, aren't typically revenue generating months. And we stash that money aside ahead of time. So we go into the winter with confidence, knowing that we have the money set aside. We're going to get through it. We don't have to take out loans. We don't have to rack up a bunch of credit card debt. We have the cash set aside, cover our overhead expenses that carry through the winter months. And we've set the stage for the spring to prepare to launch for a successful spring season.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of just went through what you do. Can we dig into it a little bit and then first start with how many years did it take to get to a place where you didn't have to borrow money to get through the winter? Was it in year 3, that you were cash flow positive in March and April?
Yeah, I think it depended on the year and our sort of growth trajectory each year. We had years where, early on when it was just me and, one other employee or 2 employees, it was a lot easier because we didn't have overhead of a shop and all that stuff. Our overhead was way, way lower. So it's sort of, as the business scaled, so did the cash on hand required. So there's definitely a sort of ratio there that as the business increased and grew, so did the need for more cash. And that's been a conversation that we've had, pretty much every year, this time of year, is at what point does this become like problematic, where we need so much cash on hand to get us through this time period that, like, does it even make sense to keep scaling to a certain level before we need to actually like solve this problem of actually creating revenue over these months at a minimum just to cover our overhead expenses? So that's sort of a separate conversation, but
Man, I feel like there's so many different directions we can go here.
Easily, yeah. I have a quick question. So you branched off into that thought. Just mark it out for a moment and come back here. Once you started learning how to budget and save, what is your day-to-day look like in the wintertime now? like from a workflow standpoint, or do you guys like shut down entirely?
Yeah. So we scale way back. My operations manager is pretty much the only staff member that we keep on full time. My office manager goes down to part time. We have a couple virtual assistants, so they stay on doing stuff. But after we're through January and complete with all the Christmas light takedowns, the month of February and like the first week or two of March, depending on how long winter sticks around, we are skeleton crew. Most of the guys collect seasonal unemployment, and I mean, it's not fun. I really don't like doing that, because it disrupts everything, and the whole system. I'm not even going to go down that road, but the whole system is broken and
every year
to navigate. So I hate putting our people through that, but at this point, it's the best option to just sort of keep things going, because otherwise there's not enough productive things for them to do for that 6.5 week period where we can justify keeping 25 employees on for 6.5 weeks.
Right. Now, what do you tell them, and when do you make the decision? Is there a date that they know is coming up that's 100% finalized, that cut's going to happen and they fully understand and expect it?
Yeah, we're very transparent with them, even during the hiring process in the springtime. It slows down in the winter. We have typically a 2-week period, middle of December till the end of December, or till January, first week of January, and then come back, do all the takedowns. So you pretty much get the whole month of January that you're working, but then it's about, 4 or 5 weeks after that where there's really not a whole lot going on. So we're open and transparent with them. They all know it's coming. We prepare. Everybody got their paperwork last week to sort of prepare and start getting in the system and getting all that stuff going on.
Okay. And then what's the strategy on getting them back?
So during that, we call it the downtime. We've been very intentional about keeping the engagement with the team going. So we'll schedule breakfast at a local diner, and everybody comes in and we cover it. And it's just really good. We have found when we started doing that, I think it was 3 years ago, our retention in the springtime skyrocketed, because people remembered that they like working with the people that, they like their coworkers, and they like the job, and they like the company, and they just appreciated the camaraderie. So that was a big sort of ninja trick, if you will, for us that we kind of unlocked. And it's something very simple. It's a, hour-long breakfast once a week. And actually, I think we did it every 2 weeks, every other week. But
it's just a way to get them back together in the same room.
Get everybody back together. They're joking around. They're kind of keeping up the tabs with what everybody's doing. And now, is it bulletproof? No, of course not. Nothing is. But when we started implementing that, our retention rate went way up.
So I got a question for you, Jon, is if you were coaching me to how to use my time during the winter, what should I be doing during the winter months to prepare for the upcoming pressure washing season?
Boy, that's a loaded question. Look, I do want to say it's a challenge, because there's times, like, I still struggle with it to this day. Like, you get through a season, especially going through Christmas lights, like, you get tired and you want to breathe for a little bit. Like, you want to sit down and take a breath. And sometimes you sort of
want the time. Yeah.
You want that time, but if you're not intentional, that you intend to just sit down and best intentions are I'll sit down for, 2-3 days and just kind of chill. And 2-3 days turns into 2-3-4 weeks. And before you know it, it's end of February and you're scrambling like, oh my goodness, see, things are going to start back up. What happened? I did nothing except for sit around all winter. So, I think what I really, really encourage, I like to do is while things are still fresh at the end of every, we say season, as things are starting to slow down, we do a seasonal debrief with our team. So today, our operations manager is reviewing all of our seasonal technicians that we hired for Christmas lights this year. He's doing one-on-one interviews with them. And he's got very specific questions on, what went well this season? What are some things that how was the training? What can we do to support you better? Did you feel like, we provided you all the necessary equipment and stuff? He's just gathering data. And we do the same thing at the end of power washing season, get all that together. And then we have all this data to look at. So as a leadership team, then we review this at the beginning of the year, or sort of the end of this year. So our meeting is next Tuesday to kind of review all this stuff. And from there, we determine what areas we need to focus on. So, and everybody gets tasks then, okay, this is, what does our customer journey look like? What's the customer experience? So our office manager is going to dive into that and see how that process is. What's our sales process look like? Was there something we could have done better on the presentation? Is there some follow-ups we could have done a little bit better? And then obviously with the technicians, what that looks like with the ops manager. So I think first step is sort of identifying that stuff. So if you don't have a big team and it's maybe you and one or two other employees that you kind of had helping throughout the season, I still think there's a ton of value in that. Is getting their perspective. What can we do better? What am I missing? And then I think a very large part of it is really reviewing your customer journey and going through, maybe if you have a couple friends that ask them to sort of secret shop you and have them go through your process and be brutally honest from start to finish. Was there friction at some point that something just felt off? It was good up until here. And then I got this weird automated text message that didn't seem to make any sense or confused me or whatever that is. I mean, I had a friend that we ended up doing Christmas lights for this year. And we had something wonky with one of our follow-up automations. And it said he was already scheduled and got his work. His job was installed and he just got this random text and said, oh, I guess you're no longer interested. So we'll take you off the list. And it was where did that come from? What happened? And then it's oh no, how many other people have gotten this, but they never actually said anything. So really going through and making sure, especially if you're leaning on automations for follow-ups,
right?
Looking at that. And if you have a smaller team, I know a lot of people do, with AI and everything else becoming way more popular, automations are a big thing. So really, really dissect those, go through, make sure that they are firing accurately. It makes sense from start to finish. And the customer experience, any friction points you got to remove. You got to make that as seamless as possible. Good friend and former coach of mine, Matt Clark, has said, and it's ingrained in my head, be easy to do business with. If anything you do in your process has friction and makes it hard to do business with you, they're going to find somebody else. So I think that the simplicity of that statement is very powerful.
Hey, for those of our listeners that, they've heard the term customer experience, let's go a little deep in this and kind of let this be of our conversation that we're moving towards. During the winter months, something that you're suggesting that would pay back a ton of value is to have a friend shop or business and then go through their customer journey. Would you kind of break down the components or how to think about a customer journey?
Yeah. So I think there's definitely more than one way to skin it, but simple forms is initial contact. So if it's a website form, if it's a Facebook ad or Google ad form, or if it's a phone call to your office or your cell phone, if it's just you, right? If you have an answering service, third-party answering service that covers, what does that sound like? So take that initial intake and look at all the different channels that you have for that first point of contact. So if you're running paid ads, what do those forms look like? What is the intake process like? If somebody just finds you organically on Google and calls you, if you have a form on your website, if they call you, if you are the one answering the phone, if you have somebody in your office physically answering the phone, or if you have a third party answering service answering your phone, each one of those touch points, what are they like? What's the experience like? So I'd start there. First one's intake. Is there any friction on that? And then sort of from that, okay, what's the second step after that initial contact? If they call and nobody answers, do you have a voicemail? What is that like? And then form gets submitted, maybe a voicemail comes in. How quickly can you get back to them? What does your speed to lead look like on anybody who contacts you? Is there times where they fill a form out and it goes into some spreadsheet and somebody forgets to check it for 3 days and you've got 18 leads in there and you're like, oh no, in there, right? It's happened. So initial form contact and then speed to lead. And then after that is when you do get back to the lead, what's the process look like there? Are you, depending on how your workflow is, do you do in-person estimates or quotes? Do you do over the phone? Do you use a program like maybe Responsibid and it's all self-serve online? Are you explaining the process also? Are you educating the customer or the prospect on your process and letting them know what the next step is during each step of your process? I think that's a big thing too, because a lot of people, we got done renovating our new home here earlier this year. And I have a contracting background. Before I started my business, I was in the construction world and I was a project manager for 10 years, building buildings from, dirt all the way up. Like, I know the process and I know what to expect. But a lot of, if you've ever tried to hire a contractor and they didn't do this, like, you don't know what to expect next because you've maybe never hired somebody or you're not in the space, obviously. Like, it can be a painful process. I mean, we've had some contractors come over and it was downright awkward because they show up and it's like, they look around and they just get in their truck and leave. And it's like, they didn't give me anything. They didn't say, hey, I'll email you something this afternoon. There was nothing. And I'm like, what just happened? So that's an extreme example, but it happens. So communication to your customer through every single step of the process gives them this reassurance, because if you think about this too, your customer, through the customer journey, there comes a point that they're always asking themselves, am I making the right decision?
Right.
They want validation that they're making the right decision. So if at any point through the process, there's this uncertainty, and the further along it gets in the process, when you get to the presentation of the price and the close and all that, if they've got that hesitation in there, you're going to have a harder time closing. But you can build a lot of that trust through the process by being very clear and communicating how your process works. What's the next step? What to expect next from us? And it doesn't have to be super like, you don't have to like have this whole song and dance. It could just be as simple as, oh, you filled this form out. If they fill it out at 1:00 in the morning on your website, what is the response that they get? Say, like, when can they expect to get a response back, and in what form? A phone call, a text, an email, whatever. Like, that's a simple thing, but some people just don't do that. They just say, thanks for submitting the form.
Right. Yeah. Bland ping pong. Yeah. You got to hit something back, and it's got to be good. And it actually doesn't have to be a ridiculously well formatted. As long as you're responding with some instruction and something, then the customer's going to feel like they trust the journey that they're on.
Yeah, 100%.
Like Donald Miller says it, you want to be the guide for your customer. And some people know the process, but many don't. You guys, we all know our process, right? Because we do it every day. But your customers or your new prospects, they don't know it. So just tell them. It's very simple. Goes overlooked, though.
Why would you say it's so critical to do this? Like, what is at stake if we don't check in on our customer's journey?
I think it becomes a form of complacency then. You think about it. There's a lot of, competition pops up all the time. And if you're brand new, there's competition around. You got to be scrappy. You've got to level up. You've got to be better than the others around you. So, and you want to just deliver the best experience possible for your customers, and referrals and word of mouth goes a long way. Digital marketing, all this advertising, all that stuff is talked about a lot today, but boy, good old word of mouth referrals are still a big percentage of our business. And they're usually the best, higher ticket, higher close rate customers. So if you could provide a really good experience for your customers, then you're going to get more referrals, which yield higher tickets, higher close rates.
Yeah. John, do you remember the original Frogger back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
The one that had the logs literally just going across. And then you had this like 4-pixel thing that was green that moved up the screen. Oh, my goodness. Like playing that Frogger back when you were a kid when it first came out was exhilarating. Like I had the time of my life playing that. And then there was a game called Defender. There was Joust. Like there was Pong. There then came Cubert. Like lots of cool games. Have you played a PS5 lately?
My daughter has one. I have not played it, but the graphics on that is incredible.
It's bananas. And so I got a PS5 during Black Friday, and we got this Spider-Man game. And are you familiar with what I'm saying when I say the Spider-Man game?
Yes. Yeah, my daughter's into Spider-Man, yeah.
It's bananas. You're basically living a movie and playing a character all on the same time. If we don't work on our businesses, we could be operating on a Frogger operating system when there's companies that are Spider-Man, and we're going to get beat. And so if you desire to win at the game of a home service business, providing value, I almost feel like that's what's at stake, is that our business won't be here in the future. And so if you're a business owner, you're thinking about getting in it, why not set up the best customer journey experience that you possibly can set up on the planet and win the game? I feel like that's kind of what's at stake. If I go to a restaurant and someone doesn't, if it ends up feeling like they treat you like garbage, the chances of me coming back is going to be low. And it's the same thing at churches. Like you can be good people, but if you don't make someone feel like they're valued, loved, and seen, they're going to bounce. And that's what our businesses ought to be doing. It ought to be not just providing a service, but helping people feel loved, valued, and seen or known. So,
yeah, I do want to just hone in a little bit on one thing you said, because you said about, if you're just starting a business and focusing on that customer journey. It is very important. I don't want to, but I also want to caution against feeling like you have your whole journey mapped out before you even go into business, because this is a constant iteration and updating and optimizing. So I say that just to like caution, don't feel like you have to have it 100% before you start, because even if you do, it's going to change. It might change a week from when you launch, because you're like, oh, I didn't realize this, right?
Actually, probably change day one.
Yeah. All good plans look great on paper until all your customers actually tell you what they want and you experience it. So, we've been in 12 years and we're still updating and adjusting our process.
So there is no Spider-Man without Frogger. And so everyone may have to start out on operating system Frogger. And then as you grow, you turn into a Spider-Man. So totally with you. Do you ever shop around during the winter months, new marketing agencies?
We did last year. We went through a couple, we interviewed some different companies, just like, and different, like, we tried a couple different strategies that we maybe haven't considered in the past. So one was like a geo-targeting ad. It didn't really pan out. It was really hard to track for us, but it's interesting, like seeing what's out there, educating yourself on what else is out there. But I still, come back to, if you look at the businesses that have been here a long, long time and that are successful, obviously because they've been there a long, long time, they really don't do fancy, complex things, right? I mean, if you look in the investing world, if you look at Warren Buffett, he does not do super complex judo investing like some of these guys on YouTube and social media would try to get into crypto and all that stuff. Like he does very simple, boring stuff. And as the longer I'm in business now, the more I'm realizing that while staying up to date on the trends of what's happening in different marketing spaces is important. Yeah. I think as business owners and entrepreneurs, it's a challenge for us to not chase that shiny new object and stick with what's working. Like I can't tell you how many times we've had marketing channels and processes that have worked and they are great. Like they are optimized and firing on all cylinders, but rather than just letting them ride and go test this other thing, we completely just shut it down and put all our chips in on this other new shiny object. And it was like, oh my goodness, that was the stupidest move we've ever done. But I know I'm not alone in that. So that's why I share that, because I know there's others that have done it too. Yeah. But I share that too, just because I think it's a simplistic, don't overcomplicate it. We really, really are, as entrepreneurs, can be really good at making things way harder than they need to be. So I talked earlier about, collecting data. So if you've got data and information on your marketing stuff and how it's performing, man, if you've got something that's working, keep it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Keep it going. If you want to try something new, that's fine. Do it in addition, but boy, just don't completely abandon something that's working.
Yeah, that's so good. So if I were to summarize what you just said or what you've said inside of this podcast is there's lots of shiny things we can add to our systems and our structures and waste a lot of time and money. And sometimes the best use of our time is actually just investing in the experience that our customers are experiencing, our team members are experiencing, and ultimately relationships are the
currency of life.
Yeah, said by a good friend of mine. And so why not focus on the relationship side more than being hyper-focused on making sure that the marketing is perfect and dialed in, because over time, simple love works.
Yep.
Yeah. Brady, is there any final questions or anything you want to ask Jon while we have him nailed down on the show?
You guys have around 25 when the season's hitting, 25 team members. What do you scale back to?
We're down to about, I'd say 6 to 8, somewhere in that
Good
range.
grief, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So much wisdom in that.
So
I just wanted to know the number. I just wanted to know the number difference there. That's such a large percentage.
I think the biggest aha that I had that helped us get through the winter months, if I could share that, is getting a handle on your costs through the winter months. And if you are not good, if you don't feel like you're good at numbers and the whole, bookkeeping side of the financial side of your business, find somebody who can partner with you and help you with that. If it's a bookkeeping company, if it's a CPA, because your CPA, they do your taxes, but they're not always going to help you understand your books. So if you can look at your expenses for, let's say you've been in business for 5 years. If you can look at your expenses over the months of December, January, February, March for the last 3 years, you can get a pretty good picture painted for you of how much you're going to need going into those months this year. And if you have that information in, say, September, that can,
it's like having a winning lottery ticket. Knowing the numbers.
It really is, because man, I tell you what, if you can have that money set aside, by November 1st, or even if it's December 31st, knowing that you've got that money there, I think you go about those months with a way different perspective.
Yeah.
Because you are not in panic mode. You are in a position of strength and confidence. And I think you set yourself up for success.
That's great advice, man.
Yeah, we're gonna close. We're gonna close on that, Jon. I appreciate you being a guest and sharing winning strategies for the winter. And I feel like you offered a ton of value. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or learn more, do you offer coaching, or do you have any way for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, I do some coaching, but honestly, best way to reach out to me is just on Facebook. You can send me a message or hit me up on Facebook. It's just my name, Jon.Karmazyn on Facebook. So look, I got the little blue check, so it's official.
I'm always amazed at how great people are so available. Like, you're not hiding. It's not impossible. You're saying, hey, send me a message on Facebook. And so I appreciate you, offering that to anyone that might be listening and looking to grow and scale, or for coaching. And Brady, anything you want to say?
I'm good. I think we're ready to close.
All right. Well, we'll see you in the future, and thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
See you, man.
Later, Jon.